Oh, that's a complete lie. Nina has fixed the tech, as one would, with I think she just looked at it and it worked, but as one would expect. So I don't know if there are questions after seeing it in a a slightly inoperable mode, or whether we want to go back upstairs and watch it properly and then just chat in the space, or over to you,
Can I just ask, is it always going to be as dark as that?
Yeah.
And are people going to be told that before they go in?
And the flashing images.
Yeah, so there's a flashing image warning for epilepsy, and there is very, very, very mild swearing, depending on one's condition of mild swearing. So there's a transcript on the drive, and I'll print out a pack that has the transcript so we can read that with stills of the paintings, the 25 paintings that are in the show. I slightly want to do some sort of pub quiz as the first person that I can identify all 25 without a list wins like a country ham or something like you would get in a pub. You have never seen the Temptation of St. Anthony so large.
Are you sure that it's not going to fail like that when the visitors...
No, that was that we just pressed too many buttons.
Okay.
It turns itself on and off at 9 o'clock in the morning, at 5 o'clock at night, but late on Thursdays and Fridays, because we're open late on Thursdays and Fridays sometimes. That was us trying to turn it on out with of its operating system. So no, there's no turning on and off. So no, it won't do that.
And are you going to have benches?
We are having benches.
For people who,
Yeah.
Need benches.
2, 3 or 4, I haven't decided yet. I would really like there to be beanbags, and I'd like any way that can suggest being in there for long periods of time. But yeah, we're going to see how it operates with benches to begin with, and then take it from there.
Is there any way of, how are you planning to identify pictures that are there in the rest of the museum? Like, are we going to be in a position to say, look, you saw that and it's here?
Yes, you are. So 2 ways. One, there's a panel just by the lift that has a list of all 25. So the ones from us and the National Gallery were all listed. And then the ones that are in our collection all have a little red label underneath them that says Nalini, Malani, my reality is different. So you're sort of pinpointed to where they are and prompted to go upstairs to have a look.
I have been going to ask about seating, and please here there will be seating.
Yep.
There's a lot to see and a lot to hear up there. How are we actually going to steward it?
I think, as far as I know, there's a seat outside the space.
And I can help with that if you want. We've been saying it in the... So it's in the new briefing, so if you haven't been on shift yet this week, you won't have heard it. But you're not going to be required in the space for the whole time you're here. The idea is that there's a seat outside the gallery, like there was with Hockney. You will operate more on a meet and greet welcome basis, tell people a little bit about what to expect before they go into the gallery, and then we do an occasional walk around the space, just checking in, making sure people are all right, and then you position yourself back outside the gallery.
There is nothing physically in the space that can be damaged or nicked, or so in the stewarding in the sense of keeping objects safe doesn't apply. I kind of think if anyone manages to steal one of those projectors, they are entitled to it. Fair play for getting that off the ceiling. You've made a lot of money too, they're not cheap. But yeah, there is nothing in there that you could possibly...
Are you going to tell them how long?
No, because I don't think there's a length. We've had innumerable conversations about whether there's a duration to the work, and I don't think there is. I think because the images are constantly in flux, the soundtrack is, Nalini says it's 29 minutes, I think my file is 32 minutes. You could tell someone that the full soundtrack is half an hour. I've sat in there for half an hour and a lot longer than that. I'm not sure if you did the half hour, you would necessarily notice that it is reset and taking you back to the beginning. There are certain bits of text that maybe you might orally tell that are different. But no, I don't think it's a work that has a duration. But this work hasn't ever existed before. It's never been shown anywhere else before. Yeah. But if people comment and that's a bit of information it seems like people need, feed it back to us, and it will either come into this show, but it's going to the National Gallery after, and then it's going around the world, and it's all going to grow and develop in that time.
What do you expect us to tell you if you were standing outside the door and you were giving a group of people going in? What would you say?
That's a very good question. I like that question. I think at its most simple, it's an artwork that explores these two big, important national collections. One national collection and two important collections of art history that looks to challenge and reinterpret the stories that are told within those collections. I think that's what the show boils down to. And they are inevitably challenged and reinterpreted from a single point of view, the artist's point of view, but you could argue, I think you could go on and say that view is quite a well-structured, non-Western perspective. And when all of those paintings are made in the Western tradition of art, it's looking at what that tradition means when you turn it on its head and look at it from outside that bit of the world.
So it's deconstruction to be reconstructed. Who wrote the script?
So Nalini wrote the script with a philosopher and sort of collaborator that she's worked with quite a lot, whose name I can't remember, but it's on the credits on the door.
Is she here?
Yes. Not right now.
No. I mean, is she going to sort of make appearances?
Yes, so she's been here for the install with her partner, and she'll be here at the PV tomorrow. There are events throughout the show, some of which will include her and some don't, but have sort of art historical analyses of the way that she works. And there will be a catalogue later in the show's run, once it's got the install shots from this show put in it and printed.
Is the speed set, or is it something that can be changed?
It is set. It's the speed and sound in the same way as, I don't know, the colour and brush mark in a painting are equally immovable. That they're part of the artwork, and it's like the blue in a painting or the frame or something is in, or the plinth the sculpture is on. So no, speed and sound are as they are. That's actually not true. The speed is the same, the sound will change for the private view, and it will have a bit of tweaking in the next 24 hours.
Is it designed to be so cheap?
No, we're trying to make it hotter in there. I quite like that you get that the feeling completely changes when you go in. There is that transition from the generic general museum space into that gallery. You hear it, you see it, you feel it, it's everywhere. And I like that as a...
Is the floor different?
It's carpeted.
It is carpeted, yeah.
Which is a way to make it darker, but it also absorbs the sound, so it's less echoey. We're working with Dean to make it a bit warmer because it's really cold in there. It's partly set at that temperature for the Hockney show, and that's the temperature you'd have drawings at, but there's obviously nothing in there that needs climate control. I don't know how that's going. I would assume changing the temperature's fairly straightforward, but it's still cold in there. So at the moment, I don't know. It's chilly. I think it may have been that because there are going to be however many hundreds of people at the PV tomorrow, it will be warm in there because of bodies. I think when it comes to being open to the public, that's something that we're aware of too.
It's just if it's immersive, you're going to be...
Yeah, it's right nippy. Yeah. We need blankets for people, and I'm not in any way opposed to there being blankets for people in an exhibition. That sounds like a nice thing to do.
Where's it being advertised and how is it being marketed?
By Katie Jenkins. It's got quite a lot of advertising through the National Gallery and through us. We have quite a lot of press coming tomorrow. The National Gallery won't tell us who they are, which is cool partnership working in my opinion. Not sure why they haven't shared a press list with us yet. That is a distinct option that has been heavily explored. But I don't know actually. I can ask Katie and share that with FOH, and then that can get to you guys.
Because that's quite important.
Yeah.
Because so you know the sort of people that are coming from what articles and where it's been advertised.
Yeah.
You mentioned the catalogue.
Is there going to be any other merchandise?
I hadn't thought about this until my mum talked to me about it yesterday. We got the press images yesterday and I was with my folks and she asked me why these aren't postcards. And I said, I don't know, Mum. So I'm going to talk to the shop about maybe printing some postcards. I think having...
Copyright, I suspect.
There's no... Well, as long as Nalini clears the copyright, which I'm sure she will, the other images are all out of copyright because they're really old. I think it would be mad not to have the paintings from our collection with her work on them as a postcard that you can take away. If you want to be a really good pal, you can say that to the shop before I tell the shop to make some postcards, and then we can get a little bit going together.
That's a good marketing ploy, because they will then go and show it to other people.
And I think it's nice for there to be a trace of it. Once the show is over here, it is gone. It is nice to keep that analyses of these works. I think what Nalini often talks about with historical painting is that just because they're old doesn't mean they can only talk about the past. These artworks may have been made 500-600 years ago, but they are as useful as talking about today's present as they were about talking about the present when they were made. It's just those aren't the same thing, but you can still use what's in those historical objects to better understand the world that we live in. That was quite a neat little sentence. Quite like that. That was good. Thank you.
Sort of taking apart museum collections before somewhere else, or is this?
Yeah, I've done that. Quite a lot.
So that's what she does.
Oh, sorry. No, no. Nalini's not worked like that in the past.
Right.
She would quite often work with Greek and Roman myth and South Asian mythology. So have that idea of history to be dissected and reinterpreted and rebuilt, but from historical collections and objects, no. New.
Are you going to be on hand, Will, when, during the, or are you more at the university? Are you based down here?
I'm very rarely at the university, but I'll be up and down I'll be here as regularly as I ever am. Life and children and multiple sclerosis permitting.
Where is she based?
Nalini lives in Mumbai and Amsterdam. So her partner is Dutch. They're mainly based in India, but as an international person, I think effectively she just moves around the world with shows. So she's got a show in Adelaide 10 days after she's back after this place opens. And then a show in Abu Dhabi, in the Louvre, Abu Dhabi, and this sort of relatively consistent. But Mumbai is their main home.
Very, very different for the Volvo compared to what we have had, and also the road and day that it's on now. How do you think visitors will?
I think some people really won't like it, and I think the majority of people will. And that's what you want in every exhibition. If some people don't like shows, then they're not doing anything. They're not pushing, they're not trying new things.
Well, they are, but then they're deciding they don't like it.
But that's if someone goes away from, I think, any experience and everyone says it's good, then it's not trying enough. We did. Do you remember the couple just before COVID? We had that brilliant Why Museums Matter talk with Maria Balshaw, Tristram Hunt, and Sonia Boyce. Maria said a thing that was an experience from a time when she was director at the Whitworth in Manchester before she was at Tate, and she said the Whit, while she was director, took over Manchester City Art Gallery, which previously was run by the local authority, but became part of the university's museum. And she went and introduced herself to their staff, who very proudly said, we haven't had a complaint about any of our exhibitions in 5 years. And she said, what on earth have you been doing wrong? She said, what you want is about 70% approval, but you're not trying anything new and exciting if 30% of your public aren't impressed. And not liking something, because there's a valid response to liking it. It's just about being able to articulate it and understand what some things are in there. So some people will think that those paintings are sacrosanct and can't be changed. I don't agree with that. And there's a thing in the wall text about Nalini saying these aren't sacrosanct. They're there to be interpreted and updated and changed. But yeah, some people, it won't be for them. But neither will Rodin and Degas or Elizabeth Frink. I can't stand Rodin and Degas.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that why you put her on at the same time?
No, I think there's an interesting conversation in that of what two white European men did sculpting children, and what she's doing about talking about the way women's bodies are perceived through history. It's an important dialogue. And the same in Frink, that Frink talked about mythology and those stories in her works, and they're made with sort of aggression and I think fear quite a lot in her. There's like fear in her work. That there are these three equally valid opinions about how things should look and beauty and all of that. No, none of those four artists are more right than the other, but they are sort of, different attitudes towards aesthetics.
Well, you can also say that she's taken the artworks and she has changed them, but she hasn't damaged.
No, exactly right. They're still there. You can still go and look at those paintings if you want, and they're exactly the same. I also think there's a really sort of brass tacks beautiful thing in that show, that they're incredibly high resolution photographs that she's used. They're incredibly posh projectors. You can see details and close-ups of lots of those paintings that human eyes can't do. So there's a bit in the central projection, which is number 5. They're all numbered in my head. And I can't remember what the painting is, but there's this really rich fold of red fabric that's so close up and zoomed in. Even if all you get from the show is, my God, whoever that painter was really good at painting red fabric, that's cool. Why not has that as your takeaway? And you get that with all 25 paintings that are in there. She hones, and you get her eye drawing you into the bits that are of interest to her. So you'll see lots of hands. She's really interested in the way hands are portrayed and what different ways in which hands are made in paintings mean, and the language that's then used to explore that. So I think there's lots of nice art historical stuff that's just about looking at these paintings, but then interpreted in her way.
But has anything been found, because they're such high resolution?
No, because none of them. I don't think any of them are new. I don't think any of them are new photographs. I think they're all part of the National Gallery. They have about 85 million members of staff to do all of this stuff. So I think they're all research photos that have been heavily analysed before.
But what about ours?
Don't think so. But I think we ask that question at the end of the show and see what we come out with rather than at the beginning. I haven't spotted anything new yet.
Are you going to have like a feedback form outside?
There are feedback forms. I think we're working with Spencer at the moment to work out how to use those in the best way.
I'm thinking of going forward.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
When we had Grace, and then it was lockdown, Grace's television programs were the sort of similar theme, pushing people what they thought art was and traditional views, and he understands.
Yeah, no, it is. That show will push people. It's not an easy exhibition necessarily, and it challenges a lot of preconceived notions that we have about beauty and art and structures of things in the West. And it is intentionally pushing that, and it's programmed specifically to push at the things that we show here and challenge why we do it and whether it's okay and what questions we should be asking. And by asking those questions, you aren't saying the Holborn on the National Gallery is crap. It's not about discrediting anything, but it's about what do these places mean that hold so much narrative and history that has to update all the time forever. Like, that can't remain static, because nothing remains static. And the work, I hope, allows that process to become part of our programme too.
Just on that, Malani herself, does she see this as an overtly political and or feminist?
She doesn't use the word feminist because she thinks that's what everyone should be. She's right. So she doesn't like terming it as a thing because in her eyes that's normal attitudes to thinking men and women are equal. It's just correct. So it's a word that's often used about her, and in the catalogue it is used a lot, and I think it's correct to call her a feminist artist. But it's not a phrase that she uses about herself. But yeah, she'll say all of her work is political. And because of the world she's grown up in, how could it not be? So she made a large body of work prior to this about, and there's a story that was in the papers here, the 8-year-old girl in India that was gang raped by men and then beaten to death and left in the woods. And like, I don't have the words to talk about that as a story. And the fact it was just a line in a newspaper in the West and then forgotten about, and how that's one of the most atrocious things you can say out loud that happened to another human being. And she would say that if you live in a world where that happens, how can you not make everything you do political to try and smash that system. Because we have, like that can't happen in the world, right? And any opportunity to challenge any structures that support that sort of misogynistic behaviour, or I don't think she would just talk about misogyny, just those that are in power oppressing those that are not in power.
It's like in Iran last week.
Like here, it's not out of the UK. And I think we're really good in the West about always assuming these issues happen in the developing world, but they're everywhere.
I really love this though, how she's taking these works completely away from the context that you would ordinarily see them and challenging the viewer to ask themselves questions about what that is.
And I think in their traditional context it's quite hard to do that because the National Gallery is overwhelming and is that's done on purpose, that's not an accident. Like the way museums show things is carefully considered. And always has been. And those were built in imperial power to tell a particular story that supported those in power. She's great in pushing at that and sticking two fingers up to it and challenging it and saying that there are other ways to do things.
But like Sonia Boyce removing
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Caused an uproar.
Yeah, and a good uproar.
What she was asking was for people to ask questions.
Yeah. And people don't like doing that because it says stuff about ourselves. And they're hard questions to ask. And so they should be.
Can we expect an actual visit from Nalini during the course of this exhibition?
She will be around tomorrow. She's 76, so she's trying not to travel as much as she has done in the past. She has some visa issues about getting back to the UK to hopefully do a talk, but we're working on it.
Your remarks now, I think are really interesting, but I think I feel that people are going to get the most out of this sort of show by a bit of interpretation and discussion around it. So what you've said, is that going to be available in any format anywhere? Because I think it's really illustrative.
Yeah, so
people just go in and look at it. They'll read that little tiny bit of blurb outside, but they're going to miss 80% of it. And the danger is they're just going to say, "Oh, not me." There's probably no response. But having heard what she said, I find it, it begins to
percolate.
All sorts of ideas and questions and so on. But I think people need a bit of creativity.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. There will be this film that we made with Nalini yesterday, has an interview with me and Chris talking about the work, and then an interview with Nalini talking about the work. That will be we're not going to have that right at the start of the show, but that will be, and we haven't quite worked out where it's going to be displayed in the museum yet, but that will be somewhere. There'll be a catalogue about halfway through the run once it's printed that will have some stuff, and there'll be some talks and events where it's there to be unpacked too. But maybe what you're saying is that there needs to be like a curator's notebook or something, where I can write something.
Or you want a little sort of, a screen with, some little, quotations
Bits.
or bits.
Okay.
Extrapolations of what
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea.
So that people, don't get overwhelmed, but if you like, raise a few questions that they can then go in to see whether they can answer them. A bit like me saying at the beginning, what would you say to people when they're going in? But some of the things, talking about the way that works are reinterpreted and so on, your early remarks were really interesting.
Thank you.
And really valuable. And I think people would, really enjoy a lot more. But if you say too much, then obviously you're doing the
It's that balance, isn't it? You have to say enough that it piques that interest, but not that. I don't ever want this in shows I make, but it's particularly pertinent in this show. The prevailing narrative of this work can't come from a white middle class man. Like that isn't appropriate in any way. So I think you're right. I'll try and work on something that adds a bit of flavour and is a thing that people can take away, but isn't a tomb that you then have to wander around and get a mortgage out to.
But why should it not be?
Because every perspective in the world comes from white middle class men, and we've spoken enough.
They're absolutely
I just think that's
stamped on
wrong.
at the moment. I think it's the opposite.
Okay.
No, I really do, and I think,
Do you not think white men have dictated the world enough?
No.
Okay.
No,
different white middle class man. You're this generation.
Yeah, and I think
That's true, but if I give information, I am taking up space from someone else that can give the information. By definition I am, because no one else is talking. No one else has the privilege to stand up here and say this.
I think what we're saying is that we don't necessarily want you to be producing a guide that this is how it must be done from the view of a white middle class man, but just some questions that we can throw out.
I'm undoubted. I think that writing up a crib sheet that then can be used as discursive, no doubt that's a good idea to do. I won't have that ready for the show opening on Friday, but I'll write it over the weekend and have it ready for the week.
Yeah.
But I think an important thing in this show is that we're listening to a range of voices, and I am very cognizant of the prevailing voice in this exhibition not coming from me.
it's
But also
coming
if
from
there's some
her.
questions.
Yeah.
It's coming from her and her generation living through and as a child growing up in partition.
Absolutely.
Which is something, unless you've experienced, you don't understand.
No, for sure, absolutely not.
And I, having been to India myself many times and met people there, it's something we just don't.
No.
We don't have a clue.
No.
But otherwise, the onus is almost on the gallery stewards to be
Yes.
So it'd be white middle class ladies. Of my generation, together as a young one, and that'd be worse, wouldn't it?
No, that'll be that. To me, that's better. That's a better voice to hear than mine.
What we think, and that's not the interpretation.
But I think what we're all trying to say really is that there isn't an appropriate voice to talk about a single thing, and we need to bring as many voices together to talk about work, because these are stories that are about all of us.
Yeah.
I'm not in any way suggesting that we want to create a hierarchy of. I know some of you better than I know others. I am not into hierarchical structures in anything. Smash every system. But yeah, some notes to support your guys' understanding, without a doubt, is an important thing to do. And yeah.
Maybe you could put the questions on the wall, 5 questions. What will you take out of this? What, just as you mentioned earlier.
What were my 5 questions? Did I have 5? Shit.
What is your interpretation? What do you think her interpretation is?
And those prompts are nice. Just little,
Just
what do you reckon?
Bullet points on the outside of the wall, so people are already going
Thinking.
in, thinking about it.
I can take that away and have a think.
Well, I also think a lot will depend on who goes.
Yeah.
And if it's being advertised in the right places, the people that are going to, the majority of the people that are going to come and see it will have an inkling.
Yeah, absolutely.
They will know her work. Or
Yeah.
they will be interested
Yeah.
in the
And
subject.
that there is no doubt that me being employed here and delivering contemporary art programs in the Holborn that hasn't happened before, it's not a secret that is an attempt to diversify and change Holborn audiences. It's not an either or, it's adding an additional audience rather than getting rid of an audience that is wonderful and already exists. But yes, my hope is that having a show like Nalini, an artist like Nalini showing here, will bring lots of people that in the past might not have come, which is cool. I'm into that.
What are you going to follow this with?
So the show after this is an exhibition by a Scottish Barbadian artist called Alberta Whittle, who's currently representing Scotland at the Venice Biennale, and she won the Turner Prize in 2020. She's making a series of sculptures, and we're going to have the English premiere of her Venice film and a couple of other films, and then some bits in and around town as well. Works on billboards, an audio guide that you can listen to and walk around town learning about stuff.
What about kids? Because people do bring kids in, particularly at half term. Is there going to be some activities down here?
There are activities in the learning space. There is a warning on the door because there is a word for a female dog that begins with B is the swear word in the show. To me, that's quite a mild swear word. That may not be to other people, and that is also fine, but that's not the worst thing. I would have no issue if I heard my kids saying that, I don't think. Maybe I would, I don't know. It's quite a specific word for them to know. But also, I've made loads of shows that are shown on projectors like that, and just the structure and way the work is shown is quite fun for kids. They will run in front of the beams and make shadow puppets, and all of that is totally fine.
That's the way ahead for children, though. That's technology, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Nope.
So we do, I think it's good that you're bringing this in. 'Cause it's
Thank you.
No.
And I'm really into the idea that kids should be taught that those paintings aren't sacrosanct, that they're stories and you can change them. Just be smart and think about what you're doing. It's only about thinking about what you do.
Is it charged? Sorry, is it table or just the Rodin?
No, it's all on the same, whatever the 12, that's right, isn't it? You can't go upstairs at all without paying in it.
Is this the first of many collaborations with the National Gallery?
No. No, so this was a specific funding opportunity that we applied to. The DL of that is that my job equivalent at the National Gallery is my old tutor from my master's and a very, very, very dear friend. So I don't like to say that's the reason I won the application when I applied for it, but you know, it might have been. So no, it's a single partnership just for this show, and then, I mean, if they put out another thing that we could apply to, I would consider applying to it, but I would hope that the National Gallery wouldn't select the same organisation twice, because there are lots of organisations that they should work with. Sorry, I keep missing you asking questions.
I was just going to make an interesting comment about Malani's work in relation to Banksy and some of the political stances that he has on some of his pictures. I remember 5 young adult boys, grown-ups. I think they find that really interesting because they really like Banksy.
Mm-hmm.
If you interpret that in a similar way.
Yeah, and I think that way that like you can have a structure that exists and then put something over it, and it. She uses the phrase, the essay that I wrote for the catalogue is about a phrase that I didn't know before, but a phrase that she often uses. It's the palimpsest, which is about the architectural overlaying of things. So that you have, and Bath is ripe with it, that you have like a Roman city and then a Georgian city built on top of it and then a contemporary city built on top of it. But those different layerings of things relieve and reveal different stories. So the essay sort of frames that's what she does in the work, and then it exists in the site that it's shown. But yeah, and like graffiti does that. That it uses a physical structure and steals it to say something else. Is it home time? Oh God, it's really home time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. And those are the conversations, right? That's what it's about. It's about